مرحبًا جميعًا، أهلًا وسهلًا بجميع الحاضرين بالعالم العربي.
Welcome to you all. Welcome to all listeners with us. We meet again in this cyber world and in this workshop that I won't say summer, that is presented by Arij in collaboration with Facebook for Journalism and Women in News in Africa and the international news for women and the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Germany. Now we see in the chat the instructions for interpretation to communicate with our guest today, who will speak to us in English, and I will be communicating with you in Arabic. In case you wanted to listen to English, to Arabic in this session, please press on the globe icon at the bottom of the screen and select English or Arabic, whichever you wish to listen to. And if you were following us on in your mobile, you can also click on the three dots and then select more and then activate interpretation feature. And if you don't have this, you need to update your version. So leave, update and get in. Today, in this ninth session, it will be presented to you right now.
It matters because the people who tell the stories are the ones who shape the narrative.
لن أبقى صامتة. هو صوت لنا جميعا، هو أداة للتغيير، هو للمساعدة للمساندة وتقديم أدوات الصمود.
التحرش ليس له علاقة لا بالعواطف ولا بالجنس. التحرش هو إحساس بالقوة اللي بتستبعدك من المكان، بزقك أنت مش هنا.
هدف ليس فقط الحماية بلحظة التحرش ولكن الحماية ما بعد الإبلاغ أيضا.
لا نأمل أن يكون إعلام فقط شريك بالتوعية، نأمل أن يكون شريك بفرض سياسات تمنع التحرش الجنسي داخل الرقص وداخل مكاتب الأخبار.
إذا وبكل سعادة أعلن
And with all pleasure, I announce today this project and the website of this project, which is there in the chat and in the iwnSSS.net, and then you can select English or Arabic. You can find resources, education resources, and webinars, awareness webinars, and other articles that are related to harassment, researches that were developed by researchers who are specialized in gender and in media and so on as well. You can find all recordings that will be education resources that are open to you just for the general benefit in the Arab world and wherever you are. Again, as we've announced previously, that there will be a diploma against discrimination, together against discrimination. It's the first in this area, which focuses on giving participants theoretical curricula for designing complaints tools against all types of use of powers against harassments and have accurate investigations and how to start a campaign and then its consequences. 20 trainees will be able to get this competitive diploma that they will be selected by the experts committee. It will continue for 3 months. It will start from June 1st until 15th of September on Arige's virtual website. And now we start today. Today we announced the nomination, and it will close on May 12th at 12 p.m. Amman time. Again, this is the first in its kind and it's comprehensive in the Arab world, and we hope that participants will be actors of change in this world. Again, I would like to remind that our team is always ready to support and help. And if you sought any help and communicate with us, we will send you a link through in the chat box today, just for support or any other type of communication. And later on, you can communicate and also set your questions with Jane and just raise your hand and we will please just be direct with your questions and then the question not to be more than 30 minutes in order to give time to the biggest number of participants. And if you had any other question, you can also always post it through the chat or Q&A. Please let's stick to all the codes of conduct. We don't want any some taboo words and just to be considerate to all comments or to not to be mocking and to just watch the privacy of others. Again, we go back to our meeting beyond. There's a big scenery and the world around the world. Now today is the International Day of Journalism under a big title that is accurate information. It happened that investigative journalist was selected to have the prize of this year. She was prosecuted because of her work, her investigative work, and she got threats and she received more than 90 hatred messages an hour. At the same time, last week there was at the court of this where Ursula Bumbrick, who was standing next to on a high position meeting, and she commented that she felt alone and she felt lonely and hurt because this would never happen to a man. So in both cases, we find that who gets hurt is a woman, and who uses power are doing this against women. So we need to identify places of work and what is absent sometimes, and that both women who are well-known figures with a different social perspectives. So we want to ask, what about women who don't have any sort of support, who cannot express themselves? How can we encounter harassment and big harassment cases? And so we will talk about silence and how it can affect our life as women, because violence can come from everywhere, and directly or indirectly, or without bad of representation, or sometimes symbolic. Our guest today is specialized in sexual harassment. She's a journalist and she is the director of Women in News. She will tell us more about to learn more about experiences and how to experience it. What are the challenges? What are the alert lessons from sexual harassment in Africa and in cases from Rwanda? And Jane Godia has a big expertise in this regard and in raising awareness, and she has a high diploma in gender development from Nairobi the university. She has studied, and she's an activist in many cases, and then she gender, youth, adolescents in Africa, and she's also a union member in Kenya. Jane Godia, welcome to us today. Welcome to you with us today, and the floor is yours. You're muted. You're muted, Jane. You're muted.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to join the Arab region this afternoon. Ruba has introduced me. My name is Jane Godia. I'm Director for Africa Women in News. And today we are going to speak on global perspectives. What have we seen in Africa with regards to sexual harassment, and what have been the challenges, and what is the best practice that we have seen? I would like us to really have this thinking, and Ruba, maybe you can help me here. If we can just get like a minute or two to see responses from the participants in relation to the questions that I have on the screen. Is it working?
نرجو من مشاركين مشاركة هذه الأسئلة هذه الأجوبة في الشات إذا أردتم. هل سبق أن...
Okay, so she's asking them to write their answers in the chat box, and she's repeating the questions again.
نحن في انتظار من يرغب
بالمشاركة. Okay, she just gave them the questions and she's asking them to reply.
سأعطي أماني يمكنكم الإجابة عبر.
You can answer whether through using chat.
أهلا أماني. تفضلي بالسؤال أو لديك.
Amani would like to answer. If the first question, yes, I was subject to sexual harassment, and whether at work or in the street, and sometimes it's verbal and or touches even. So sometimes you wouldn't know why is this happening. You can't understand why it's happening, and I don't want to say that because I'm dressed in a certain way. No, I was subject to sexual harassment, even and regretfully, we need to learn how to stop this from happening, to stop that person who practices this harassment to stop. Thank you, and we thank you because this is difficult to talk about Jane. So we have answers that say that it is a problem, and sometimes women feel weak about it. Chris says that no, for question one, he hasn't encountered any harassment, but as for the two other questions, Khadija says yes, it is a problem indeed, and many times I do get subject to harassment, although my clothes don't really are not inviting, and then about how to encounter it. There are many answers that say if it's a sickness, yes. If the perpetrator is sick, Khadija says yes, I was subject to harassment, although my clothes weren't inviting, and I think it is a problem indeed.
Okay, can I continue?
No.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for your responses, and we are all agreeing that sexual harassment is a problem, and there are those of us who have encountered sexual harassment. So when we talk about sexual harassment, we must really, first of all, understand what it means. Sexual harassment is unwanted and offensive behavior of a sexual nature that violates a person's dignity. And that behavior is not good because it makes someone feel degraded, very low in themselves. It makes people feel humiliated. You start feeling ashamed of yourself. You start feeling intimidated. You become fearful, or you feel threatened. You feel that you are not safe. So sexual harassment is a problem because being of sexual nature, it makes one to feel intimidated and threatened. But when we look at sexual harassment, and coming from Africa, I'm talking to a large constituency that is in the Arab region, we realize that sexual harassment is a global problem. It is not restricted to one region, and it does not have limitation to the status of a person. You can be sexually harassed if you're poor. You can be sexually harassed if you're rich. Even those who are billionaires face sexual harassment. So sexual harassment cuts across the board. When we look at the situation of Africa, we find that sexual harassment does happen. But in Africa, many people do not talk about it when it happens to them. There is a lot of silence. Sexual harassment is deep, but it is shrouded in a veil of silence. And for those who work in the media or in the workplaces, it is a very big problem. It is the elephant in the room. And everybody knows that it is happening, but you will find that nobody is talking about it. And those who witness, those who see it happening, do not report. They turn and look the other side. And those who are victims, those who are sexually harassed also, recoil in silence and often blame themselves for being the cause of sexual harassment. They fear, and hence they fail to report. But when we look at the issue of sexual harassment, we find that there are some places where people have talked. And that came with the Me Too movement. When one person said she had been sexually harassed, then everybody else put up their hands to say they have been sexually harassed. So when this happened, we find that there are many survivors of sexual harassment, and one is not alone. So those who've been sexually harassed should not keep quiet. But in Africa, there is a loud silence. Nobody is talking about sexual harassment or being sexually harassed. So we are asking why Africa did not have its own Me Too movement. Did this Me Too movement, when people in the other parts of the world were talking about sexual harassment, why did Africa keep quiet? Did the Me Too movement skip Africa? In one way, I can say yes, and in another way, I can say no. Africa is deeply cultural, and because of this, the origin or where the Me Too movement started, if you would have started speaking about sexual harassment, then people would have said that you are talking about European and American things, that you're bringing to them American issues, because sexual harassment started in Hollywood. And then Africans only looked at it like a Hollywood issue that cannot be discussed in our country. Nobody looked at it as a problem that was affecting all of us in our places of work. But I can say no. Sexual harassment at the workplace and in media organizations is our living reality. It is there. We see it every day. For those who are working in media, I can say that there is no single newsroom which will claim that they have not experienced sexual harassment. But our problem is that no one speaks out about it. And nobody has the courage to speak loudly. Those who want to talk about it can only whisper and talk quietly. They don't want people to see them discussing the issue of sexual harassment. But why is this the problem in Africa? Because we are brought up in cultural settings that do not allow us to speak openly about sex. Our cultural, our tradition does not allow people to talk openly about sexual matters. And you've seen when I give the definition of sexual harassment, I'm talking about an issue that is of sexual nature. So how do you talk about it in the African context? We find that even when somebody is raped, even when young children are defiled, it is considered a shameful act. No family wants their members to be associated with sexual harassment. So they will want you to keep quiet and not to let other people know. Because if you speak about it, the family name is going to be spoiled. The family name is going to be soiled. So we are forced to keep quiet because of that. We are also forced to keep quiet to protect the person who's sexually harassed. We are forced to keep quiet to protect the perpetrator of sexual harassment because it could be somebody who is known in the family. This then affects the way we relate at work. We carry our culture into the office and we now behave like we are within a family setting. And because we carry the baggage of socialization with us, then it affects how we handle issues of sexual harassment. Again, in Africa, there are certain issues that rise that makes sexual harassment very hard to deal with. Those who have been sexually harassed will not speak. The first challenge is that they think no one will believe them. Because when you are sexually harassed, it is not easy to get evidence. So the issue of evidence in sexual harassment makes it a very difficult issue to deal with. So because there is no evidence, the survivors know that nobody will believe them. Then when we report or you tell media organizations that sexual harassment is happening, they will ask you, who has been harassed? Nobody has reported the case. Where is the data? Where are statistics? Where are the complaints? We have not received any complaints. So why are you telling us that sexual harassment is happening to us? There is a lot of denial. People don't want to believe that sexual harassment is actually happening. There are those who doubt. They don't believe. They doubt completely that sexual harassment is happening. And I've spoken about culture because across generations, and because people doubt and because people don't have evidence, sexual harassment has been normalized. It has become like taking a glass of water and nobody is asking you, why are you drinking that water? Sexual harassment has become normalized because cultural issues have been brought into the newsroom. And there are those who believe that sexual harassment is foreign because there are no statistics, because there are no complaints. Then people think that, say, because there are no complaints, then there is no problem because nobody has reported. What many of us in Africa don't know is that for each case of sexual harassment reported, if one is reported, there are many others, maybe 2 dozens, maybe 1 dozen, maybe 100 that are buried without being reported. And also, it takes a lot of guts for somebody to get up against the person who harassed you and report it. Unfortunately, when you report, the issue the focus gets to you, the person who reported, and not the perpetrator. It is very sad that when you report a case of sexual harassment, you become the point of focus. Those who have reported sexual harassment are made to feel guilty. They are made to feel guilty like they are the ones who have done something wrong. And many of them end up being stigmatized. And when you ask managers that, why don't you do a survey so that you can understand the extent of the problem? Many managers do not want to do this. They fear because they know the truth, but they are in denial. They don't want to believe that sexual harassment has happened. So Ruba, my next activity to work on these two questions, just that we speak out when sexual harassment happens. Should we speak out? Or if we witness sexual harassment, should we also speak out, or should we just keep quiet, even if it is not us? And we have 2 minutes for people to respond to that, Ruba, if possible. Is that okay?
التعليقات من قبل
Yes,
الحاضرين.
we will. I will read for you some answers. Sumaya says sexual harassment is not only limited to a workplace. It could be in the street and transportation vehicles, and it in different means. Same also in family it happens, and it's a taboo, and it's not only linked to houses. Many choose that this concept be linked to rape. And Lina says, I believe that what Jane says expresses what happens in our communities, and that it is very similar to what happens in other communities.
Okay. Can I go ahead, Ruba?
Yes, نعم.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
So now I just want to look at what we as women in news have been doing in Africa. And as women in news, we started handling the issue of sexual harassment after we did a research. And WIN, as WIN, Women in News, we work in various fronts to create or to raise awareness on sexual harassment. And we do this through our cohort of women leaders, which is a 9-month intensive course. Through the course, we bring awareness to sexual harassment, and we tell them how they can manage, how they can protect themselves, and how they can prevent sexual harassment from happening. We also work with media organizations. We call them our advisory partners. And through them, we bring trainings to the newsroom. And in these trainings, we bring awareness to the managers, executive directors, and to senior newsroom managers, and to even male journalists. We ensure that when we go to a newsroom, when we bring the training to a newsroom, it is gender balanced. We don't want to train women alone because sexual harassment is not a women's issue. So we insist that all staff are brought in, and we don't want it to be an editorial issue. We ask that they bring people from other departments like finance, like marketing and sales, like advertising, because we know that even in advertising and marketing, there are issues of sexual harassment. So when we are training in a media house, We even ask for security in that office to be brought to the training, because we know that even security guards within an organization can also perpetrate sexual harassment. That is what we do when we are having meetings with our advisory partners, the trainings. Then we have a special meeting where we host CEOs and other C-suites, like Chief Financial Officer, Chief Operations Officer, Chief Internet Technical Officer, and all that. So in this best share practice meeting, we also talk to these CEOs about sexual harassment. Then we have this year introduced media industry partners, because they have journalists who are their members. And we say they must ensure that their members are not perpetrators of sexual harassment. So we are bringing conversations with the Union of Journalists. We are bringing conversations with the editors. The editors also have their forums or their organizations. So we are speaking to them as well. We are bringing this organization to, we have in Africa, women who are in media have formed their organizations. Like in Kenya, we have the Association of Media Women in Kenya. In Tanzania, we have the Tanzania Media Women Association. In Malawi, we have the Association of Women in Media in Malawi. In Botswana, we have the Botswana Organization of Media Women, or Botswana Media Women Association. Like in Zambia, we have Zambia Media Women Association. So we bring them together and speak to them about sexual harassment. But we also ask them to mobilize their members, because when we go to media houses, we don't train everybody. So we ask these media organizations, these media industry partners, to bring their members so that we can train them as well. This year, early this year, we did a training of trainers on sexual harassment, because we said we don't want only one person being a trainer on sexual harassment. We want to have many people who can use opportunities that come to them so that they can use the powers they have to train on sexual harassment anywhere. While they can train anywhere, we also link them when we are having too much work. We then send them to train in media houses so that we do not stop work, because trainers has really helped us. And we did this training in January, and already for Africa team, they are already training media houses on sexual harassment, and they are very busy. Then we developed guides, manuals for people to use. But when we go to media houses, we also implore employers to develop sexual harassment policies so that they can have guidelines and standards on how they can deal with sexual harassment. So as we actually, when it comes to the issue of sexual harassment, we are busy throughout the year and we are not sleeping. But what this has helped us with is that now conversations are taking place. Conversations are taking place. People are starting to discuss sexual harassment. And for me, that is the good thing. It is baby steps. We are not going far. Maybe we are still crawling. We have not even started holding the table like babies. But the most important thing is that we have created awareness and people are talking about this. I want to give an example of a media house where we went to train. And on that day, we trained, only want you to train 1,000 people for us in our media house. This shows you that there is demand. There is demand. Once you've created awareness, people realize that sexual harassment is a problem, and they then decide that there is need to take action. In Rwanda, one of our partners who listened to us, who we value, and we had gone there for training, came across a case of sexual harassment. when one of the workers said, "Why are you people keeping quiet and this is happening to me?" When this lady raised the issue, the CEO decided to listen. All staff were brought together in a meeting and they were asked if there was a problem. And in that meeting, so many people raised up their hand to say, yes, there is a problem. This office is toxic. It is hostile. So many people are being harassed. And the CEO, who is a very progressive man, decided to take action and asked everybody who is being sexually harassed to speak up. He decided that the organization was going to be zero tolerant to sexual harassment. He even created a drop box where people could drop their sexual harassment complaints. And that organization has really, really done very well in terms of managing sexual harassment. They have developed a sexual harassment policy. As Women in News, we also do research. We believe in understanding the extent of the problem. And I told you that before we started creating awareness on sexual harassment, we did a research. That research was done in 2017. And we have the data and we have the statistics. We did another research last year in 2020, sexual harassment in media organizations. And we did this research. They've been done in Africa, in Southeast Asia, and in the Arab region. So we have the statistics. And in the 2017 statistics here, I will give you the comparison between Africa and MENA. If you look at the purple color, that is Africa. If you look at the yellow color, that is Middle East and Northern Africa. So that is the Arab region. So in our research for 2017, we found that 64% in Africa were verbally, sexually harassed. In the MENA region, it was 59%. Then out of that research, in Africa, we found that 24% had been sexually harassed, and in the Arab region, it was 17%. Then we found that in Africa, 10% had been sexually assaulted. And when we talk about sexual assault, it means things like rape or almost being raped. And that was 10% for Africa and 3% for the Arab region. But when we look at these statistics, we find that these numbers are very many. But those who reported were only 29%, meaning that 71% of women who were sexually harassed did not report the incident. And this speaks for both Arab region and Africa region. So the statistics are glaring. We are soon going to release our 2020 results. In July, the data analysis is being done and the results are going to be shared. And I'm sure our colleagues in the Arab region are going to share with you the results that we have of sexual harassment in the Arab region.
شكرا. Jane,
Jane, we have some questions.
You want me to stop
so
there?
Far.
You want me to stop
May we take the questions, please?
Yes, please.
Yes, there are some questions that we need to take down.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Tarek. And then Dr. Zaid, so she's naming the ones who want to put the questions.
Okay.
Tarek.
I'm listening.
Okay, this is Dr. Zaid. Just a question regarding sexual harassment in Africa. Why do we see why are you tackling media in Africa? Is it in the Arab world? Did we also highlight it was it highlighted as big as it is in Africa, or is sexual harassment in Africa different than it is in other parts of the world? Like, is it on a bigger scale, and is sexual harassment really a psycho disease or no?
شكرا دكتور.
What do you think, Jane?
Okay, you want me to respond to that one?
No. Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to say that sexual harassment in Africa is different from sexual harassment in the Arab region. If you look at these statistics, the difference is very, very small. The difference is not big. Like here, the difference could be only 7%. Here, the difference is only 6%. So the difference is not big. I think the scale of sexual harassment is almost the same for Arab region and for Africa. The challenge, I believe, which could be the same for Arab as it is for Africa, is that very few people want to talk about it, because even when we were doing this research, you find that not many people want to fill in the survey form. I think they don't want to remind themselves of what happened to them. They want to put it at the back of their minds. Sexual harassment is not a psychosocial, it's not a psycho disease. Sexual harassment is about power. It is about an equal power. It is not about sex. It is about an equal power. It is perpetrated by people who are senior, who are in a level higher than the person to whom it is being perpetrated. Even when it is peer-to-peer sexual harassment, you'll find that one of the peers is above the other person. So sexual harassment is not about a disease. It is about power, and it is about an equal power relations. Sexual harassment happens in an equal power relations. You'll find that this person is stronger than you, is bigger than you, is in a higher position of power, is in a high level in terms of employment. So that is how sexual harassment happens. Thank you. Another question?
نعم الأستاذ طارق.
Yes, Mr. Tariq.
تفضل. إذا كان الأستاذ طارق لم يكن ليس هنا جينيفر.
Seems we don't have Tariq with us.
And actually yesterday a friend of mine, she opened up to me and told me she was sexually harassed. So she got nearly raped by a friend. And I asked her, why didn't you talk about it? Why didn't you tell anyone? And she told me, because I didn't have evidence and I didn't want to ruin his reputation because he didn't actually rape me. And then another day, another friend of mine told me about this guy that when he gets drunk, he gets very touchy and inappropriate. So in the case of my friend, what was she supposed to do? Because she didn't have any evidence.
The biggest challenge with sexual harassment is that people try to look for evidence, but it is very hard to get evidence in sexual harassment. But it is still important to report. If somebody touches you inappropriately, it is still important to report. Go and say, this person today came and touched my breasts. This person today came and touched my back. This person today came and forced me to kiss him or to kiss her. You know, you go and report. And if you keep on reporting about that person, then from there, you start gathering evidence, whether it is writing in the diary, on this date, 3rd of May, he did this. On this date, 4th of May, he did this. Then you write every day that this person does something to you, you write it down. Having no evidence does not mean sexual harassment did not happen. It happened. You will go and report. It is the most important thing is that if there is a policy, meaning there are standards and guidelines, if you go and report, the person you are reporting to will listen to you. They will listen to you. Most importantly, you write down your complaint. Don't keep your complaint by word of mouth. Write your complaint, make it official, let it be known that you are sexually harassed. Thank you.
هنالك بعض المشاركات.
There are some say that sexual harassment also happens in social media and within, and it's a phenomenon, and there's lots of exploitation that happen. And Hiba says that it's the first time that a media agency tackles this issue, and this is a very good start, and we really appreciate this. But we need to work much on this, and we need other authorities need to work on this. And some would claim that the woman who reports is a sick person or is not really esteemed. Mariam says because of the bad economic situations, there is a collective migration to the north to go to Europe, for instance. But those who look for a different social status, they do get subject to repetitive rape incidents. And so, and Sabah says, were there consultations with the psychologist? And I believe we've answered on this. So these are different comments. What do you think?
I think for me, the most important thing is that we have conversations around sexual harassment. The most important thing is that we teach people, we create awareness and tell people how to protect themselves, to be sure that they are not going to be in a situation where they are going to be sexually harassed. And if they see signs, because you can start seeing signs of sexual harassment, like somebody coming and rubbing your hand, they go, they come, they rub your hand a longer time, they go. So you start seeing signs. Once you notice these signs of sexual harassment, you need to start being careful. And I was going to give another slide, which is in front, just to tell people, particularly those who are talking about their friends, if you're with a man, he's your friend, how far should that friendship go? I think I'm coming to that. Is that okay?
نعم.
I can
Yes,
continue.
please.
Can I continue?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
All right. So I've said that we did a research in collaboration with City University of London, and preliminary results are showing that there are over 50% cases of sexual harassment, and they also include sexual assault. So I really want to ask our participants about this, Ruba, if they think employees, what are employees' rights? If you are employed in a place, I know some have talked about sexual harassment in the transport, sexual harassment when you are walking, but let us talk about sexual harassment in the workplace. Do you think employees have rights? And if they have rights, what are these rights? Ruba?
نعم. سأطلب من المشاركين والمشاركات الإجابة.
Okay, I will ask the participants to answer in the chat.
نعم.
Yes, so we're starting to get answers. Yes, yes, they have rights. Yes, many are saying yes, 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 yes. And of course, yes, they have rights. And Khadija says yes.
Do we think employers have responsibilities? What is their responsibility? Ruba?
I've read the question.
كمسؤولية من المدراء من أصحاب العمل لا عندما يحدث تحرش جنسي في أماكن العمل. أيضا جواب من مريم نعم.
Yes, 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 there is responsibility.
Okay. All right.
That falls on the employers. So yes, all are saying yes, 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 yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Fatin says no. No.
Saying that employers don't have responsibilities. No, for which question?
Yes.
For this one.
على السؤال الثاني.
No, the third question, that employers don't have responsibility, because she says this is a personal assault or a personal offense.
Okay, all right, okay, thank you. We will get to that. I think for me and Jennifer, who was asking me questions, and for all of us, it is important to understand that anywhere where we are, sexual harassment has consequences and there are costs that are attached to it. When you harass somebody at the workplace, they are traumatized. They suffer psychological trauma and they lose their self-esteem, and then they lose the morale to work. They don't want to come to work. They don't work nicely. They start performing badly. Then to the harasser, the person who is the perpetrator of sexual harassment, it will hurt their reputation. It will cost him money because he has to deal with lawyers to pay to defend him. It will damage his family and he will suffer. Maybe the wife will divorce him. The children will know that their father has been sexually harassing other people. So sexual harassment has costs to the person being harassed and to the person harassing, but also to media organizations, if we are talking about media or any other employer or employment agency, because it is bad for business. When people know that sexual harassment happens in your organization, people don't want to come there to work because they will label your organization with names like being a sexual harassment den. Nobody will want to come there because they fear that you have not provided a safe place to work. So like I had told you that it is important to have candid conversations, and it is also important to create awareness because sexual harassment is a challenge and it affects safety and security of everybody. Sexual harassment has affected women physically and psychologically, and they don't perform well at their workplace. Sexual harassment training should take place so that employers and employees know about the issue, and employers and employees must know of the protocols that have been put in place. I said I was going to come to this because many of us, we sit with people, we allow them to hug us, we joke, and we even maybe kiss on the cheeks. Then at times we kiss on the mouth, thinking that it is innocent, that it is friendly. But I want to say that people have to be very careful, even with their friends, because that is where you will find yourself in that situation where you are being raped. Because if you do not draw the line, how far can you take a relationship with somebody? Jennifer was telling us about a friend who was saying that when he's drunk or when, I don't know, he does what, he gets very sexual. So Jennifer has to be very careful with that kind of person. And this is a warning to everybody that we need to draw a line in how we relate with other people. How do we tell that it is no longer a friendly hug? It is becoming something that you don't understand. And when you don't understand this something, it ends up being rape. So you as a person must be able to draw a line. You must be able to tell that if it is Tariq who was hugging you, then you say, Tariq nowadays, the way he's hugging me, I don't like it. It is not normal. So you stop Tariq, because if you don't stop him, he's going to rape you. So you have to be very careful that that friendly hug does not turn into rape. You must be able to draw that line. I don't know how much time we still have, but
ما زال لدينا نصف ساعة.
Yeah, we've done like half an hour.
We still have had half an hour. We still have half an hour.
I really know people are saying somebody was sexually harassed. The only one I hear is where somebody was almost raped. Can we say, what do we see when we are in the office? What forms of sexual harassment? What do we see people doing? Then we can say that this person has been sexually harassed. What behavior do we see in our country? Sorry. Ruba?
ما هو نوعية التحرش الجنسي الذي يحصل، وهل أصبح نوعا ما معمم في أماكن العمل ومقبول؟ هذا السؤال الذي تسألينه جين.
Yeah. Okay, so she's translated your question.
يمكنكم مشاركتنا بالأجوبة.
And you can please share your questions in the chat box. Now the second question. The previous, the second question. Yeah, she read it to them.
Okay, which behavior do you think is most prevalent?
She did
prevalent. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Fatin says harassment could be hidden even if and could be kept hidden if the harassed stay silent, and especially if she thought that there are no witnesses. Islam says. Regretfully, civil society organization, although it's a human rights organization, and that she referred me to investigation after they filed complaint against me. So it's very difficult to handle such a situation, and because we didn't have any policies, clear policies, this happened. There's also another male conspirational efforts that would keep us away and not to access justice in this regard.
Okay. Can I continue?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when we speak about sexual harassment taking place, when you say you are working with a human rights organization and there are no guidelines, there are no policies, there are no standards, it is important that we start thinking that where we work or we campaign that our organizations should be zero tolerant to sexual harassment. We, as the people working in that organization, can demand from our employers that we want a sexual harassment policy and that we want to be in a situation where our organization is zero tolerant to sexual harassment. How can this be done? It can be done by finding a way of dealing with sexual harassment in that office. We must know our responsibility. You, as the employee, what is your responsibility to others? And behave in a way that respects their rights. What does this mean? Or behave in a way that makes them uncomfortable. And this goes to both men and women, because many of us think that sexual harassment only happens to women, but sexual harassment also happens to men. It can happen to a man being harassed by a man. It can happen to a man being harassed by a woman. It can happen to a woman being harassed by a woman, and it can also happen to a woman being harassed by a man. So, but mainly, majority of the cases of sexual harassment are of a woman being harassed by a man. Then you, as the person working in that organization, it is your responsibility to report whether it has happened to you or it has happened to somebody else. It is important that you report sexual harassment. Do not turn a blind eye to sexual harassment, no matter how small it may seem. But also, we are warning that as an employee, you do not make false claims. You do not accuse somebody wrongly of sexually harassing you. Don't cheat that you were harassed, yet you were not harassed, because we know that sexual harassment affects the lives of families and people. So be very, very careful in how you report your case. Please ensure that you are telling the truth. Employees, please must also remember, don't blame yourself. You know, people always try to blame themselves and say, maybe it is the way I talked to him, maybe it is the way I dressed, maybe it is the way I smiled. But remember, it is not your fault. When sexual harassment happens, it is because of the perpetrator, not because of you. Remember, your employer should be informed. That is what we do in our practice as WIN. When we are creating awareness on sexual harassment, we tell people you are not to blame. In a case of sexual harassment, you are not alone. And remember, your employer must be informed. Do not keep it to yourself. Let me tell you, when you are sexually harassed, even if it is 20 years later, you will still remember that incident. You will never forget it. So don't pretend by keeping it that it is going to go away. It is better that you report so that that person is dealt with. If your organization has a sexual harassment policy, please familiarize yourself with it. If there is no sexual harassment in your organization policy, then look for laws. What does your country say? What are the legal procedures in terms of sexual harassment in your country? Please know about the law in your country. Please choose to make a formal or informal complaint, but please put it in writing. When you're putting your complaint, make it official so that it goes on record. Please know about procedures and timeframes that your organization will take in dealing with a case of sexual harassment. I have said about point 7. If you have evidence or if you can keep evidence, please do or write down every time somebody does to you something. Put it on a paper, record that date in your diary. That is going to be your evidence. Nowadays, we have phones. You can even know if he's coming to talk to you, you can record that information and keep it. I handled a case where somebody was keeping the text messages. So when the case came up, that girl went and showed evidence of sexual harassment because it was coming in text messages. Also, when you report, insist to your employer that you want confidentiality. You want them to protect you, so they must maintain confidentiality in your case. And also, if you don't want to come near that harasser, you can demand, if it was in the same department, you can ask for a transfer and let your employer know what support you need from them, and check regularly to ensure that your complaint is being dealt with. If they decide not to sack that person or punish that person or ignore you, you can even go to court. I'm sure your case will be handled well. Employers have a responsibility when it comes to sexual harassment. It is not a personal issue, particularly when it is happening in the workplace. And I want people to know that at work can be the physical environment, it can be off-site when you've gone to the field, when you've gone for a conference, official conference, when you've gone for team building sessions, that is still considered at work. When you are online, that is still considered at work. So your employer has a duty to provide you with a working environment that is free from sexual harassment. Your employer can be liable if you are sexually harassed. Your employer is supposed to put in place prevention measures in the office so that sexual harassment does not happen in the first place. And your employer is supposed to establish proper processes so that if a case of sexual harassment is brought forward, then your organization is able to deal with it professionally and in accordance with the law. For me, I believe, and what we do at WIN, we challenge employers that they must commit to being zero tolerant to sexual harassment, that it is important they carry out a small research to understand the scale of the problem of sexual harassment in the organization. It is also important that they understand barriers to reporting. So if they say, where is data? People have not complained. It is the responsibility of the employer to carry out a research. I told you about the Rwanda case. And when they brought it out, so many other people came up. So it is the responsibility of the employer to understand why are people not reporting and how many people have been sexually harassed. That is the responsibility of the employer. And the employer must also put in place a practical sexual harassment policy. The managers must be educated to understand sexual harassment, and they must be educated to understand their responsibilities. Employees must be made to understand about the sexual harassment policy. And like I've said, whether you are offline or online or within the building, you are supposed to be safe. And the employer's responsibility is to ensure that the office is not hostile. It is not threatening you. It is not intimidating you. And that anything that creates a hostile work environment is removed. So when we talk about this, we also challenge employers to develop a simple sexual harassment policy in plain and easily written language that is revised by a lawyer. So the policy should be the guidelines, the procedures, the standards, and the policies. These are supposed to be there to guide how things work, how cases are handled, and what is to be done. What punishment do we give somebody who has sexually harassed the other person? And so what is the importance? Why do we insist that the organization, any organization must have a sexual harassment policy? Remember, we have the International Labour Organization, and the International Labour Organization says anybody who has employed people more than 5, I think they've reduced it to 5, previously it was 25, must have a sexual harassment policy. And this sexual harassment policy safeguards employees of all sexes and gender identities. We know those people who identify as transgender, or those people who don't want, who are gender non-conforming, they suffer all sorts of abuse in the office. So that policy is supposed to protect them. That policy sets out legal responsibilities and obligations for employees. That policy defines roles and responsibilities. Who is doing what? How are we going to ensure that our work is to ensure people are safe? That policy is an accountability tool. It holds the employer to account, but it also holds employees to account so that those who are perpetrating sexual violence can be punished in whatever circumstances. Then lastly, it helps us to avoid inconsistencies. The policy will ensure that each case is treated the same like the last one, so that it is not like today you treat this case like this, the next day you treat it the other way. No, you must treat all cases the same, and everybody deserves to have their case handled in the correct manner. So at WIN, we have a link which I can share. I don't know whether it's coming up. Sexual harassment. We can share it. I don't know whether Mira is there. She could share it with you. Our link to this tool. It's an online tool that explains about sexual harassment in the media. But we also have a manual, a practical guide on how to deal with sexual harassment within media organizations. So that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope I've been able to make a difference in what I have brought to you. Thank you so much. Ruba?
جين شكرا على هذا العرض ولقد أثرت
Thank you very much, Jane. You really stirred many questions and many inquiries from the participants, and I will read some of them. Omar says, if women shows her body or her wears inappropriate clothes, whether at work or at in the street, this is a main reason for perpetration or sexual harassment. And you've mentioned this before. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, I want to comment about dressing. The way somebody dresses should not be used as an excuse to perpetrate sexual harassment. And I want to speak to you because I know many of you are my Muslim colleagues. You wear the long dress, the black one, where you've covered your face, you've covered your legs. Does it mean that those women who have dressed like that are not sexually harassed? They are sexually harassed. The ones who wear buibui, we call it buibui in Swahili. I don't know how you call it in Arabic. But those who wear the Islamic way of dressing, even the Christian, the ones who have a religion where they have to wear long dresses and cover their head, they are sexually harassed. So somebody's way of dressing should not be used as an excuse to perpetrate sexual harassment. But in an organization, if people feel that they do not like the way they want people to dress in a certain manner, then they are supposed to develop a dressing code rule. You develop a rule. It is not about sexual harassment, but you develop a rule about how you want people to dress. For example, in Africa, maybe if you're going to the bank, you find that those who work in the bank, they wear a suit, they dress in a certain manner. If you go to some corporate companies, the big ones, there's a way that people dress. So if as an organization, you should put in place a dressing code in the way you want your employees to dress so that somebody does not then use that as an excuse. But even if you put a dressing code, it does not mean that somebody is not going to be sexually harassed. People who sexually harass, I told you, it is about power. It has nothing to do with the way somebody dresses. Thank you. Any other?
لدي الكثير من الأسئلة ومن التعليقات.
Many questions and comments. Khadija says sometimes it's not clear or explicit. It starts gradual, and the perpetrator might be testing the waters if he can go forward. And sometimes they're very cautious and aware of the consequences and what he's doing. Another question that protection of women is very important in workplaces. Lina says, what if the employer is the perpetrator or the one who is the harasser? Mariam says women should not be silent and she should be supported by her family if she was subject to rape or to harassment, and to address any or to try to approach any organization that would provide this help. And this is when we talk about awareness. Dr. Zaid says all countries that have set policies regarding harassment but haven't really achieved success. Do you think there are other ways where we should follow, or these should follow? As for women who stay silent because of work or because they don't want to lose work, we see many of them. And there's another group of questions also in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. Can I comment on those ones? Yeah, I want to say that there are times, like the person who has said that sexual harassment starts taking place gradually. That is very true. Somebody is testing waters. That is very true. And that is why I'm saying you need to know how to draw the line. You need to pay attention to the signs. Because if you see somebody is testing water, if he touches you today and you don't say no, tomorrow he's going to come and hold you tightly and you don't say no. The next day he's going to touch you inappropriately and you don't say no. So this person will see that you are not saying no. And when you don't say no, they are going to do what they want, what they are aiming for. So if you say no on day one and you tell that person that you don't want that nonsense, on day two, they come back, they test the water again. Tell them you are going to shout, you are going to report, and you don't want that nonsense. Let them know that you are serious. If I speak about the African situation, about that gradual thing, in Africa, they believe that if you want a woman and she says no once, it is not enough. They believe that a woman does not say no. So they want you to say no 100 times. And when we train, you hear the journalists telling you that, you know, in my culture, a woman, even if a woman says no, you still just go looking for her. So you must tell people that when somebody says no once, accept that no as a no. And that person who is testing waters, let them know that there is no water to be tested there. Let them know that you are not going to entertain that behavior. From day one, right at the onset of that testing of water, let them know. Protection of women is important, but I'm saying protection of all employees. The workplace must be a safe environment. And even when we don't speak about the workplace, because some of us said that people are harassed in the streets, in the transport sector, etc. As a country, we must protect our citizens. It is our responsibilities. I remember a case in Kenya where some men beat up a woman and undressed her because she was wearing a short dress. They were taken to court and they were jailed for life. So a country has the responsibility to protect its citizens. And protecting its citizen is not only protecting women, it must also protect men. And it must also let people know that a man cannot sexually harass a woman, a man cannot sexually harass a man. So everybody deserves to be protected, though women are the most vulnerable. So we must ensure that we protect our women and that they are safe. When your employer is the perpetrator, that is the biggest problem many people face, that this is the person who owns this organization. Who will I report him to? Because he's the topmost, he's the one who is up there. So where are you going to take him? So this person, you are going to take him to court. You are going to look for help outside. You're going to look for a lawyer. You can get a pro bono lawyer who will support you, and you report this case. We have Federation of Women Lawyers. We have institutes of law that do not charge you when you take a case. You are going to take your case there. Women should not be silent. I agree with you 100%. Women should not be silent. They must be protected by their employers and they must be supported by their families. When your daughter comes home and tells you that so and so did this for me out there, you should not blame her. You should find a way of helping your daughter. Get them to ensure that whoever did to them something that is wrong gets punished. Let me tell you, I was training last week, and one media house said that the people who used to sexually harassed many years ago, now they have daughters. Their daughters are grown up and are getting work, and now their daughters are being sexually harassed. So what do? You used to harass somebody's daughter. Now it is your daughter being harassed. So when we talk to people, we tell both men and women, today you will harass Jane. Tomorrow it is your daughter who is going to be harassed. What are you going to do about it? So we just have to culturally bring up people in the right way, in a way that sexual harassment will be stopped. Implementation of sexual harassment policy has been very difficult because many people develop sexual harassment policies for official purposes, and they put them in the shelves to gather dust. Nobody knows about them. But in a properly constituted space or employment, people need to know about the sexual harassment policy. People need to know that the organization does not tolerate sexual harassment. Anybody who is being brought in as a new employee is given that sexual harassment policy to read and sign and say, I will not sexually harass anybody. Let me give an example of where I work at Women in News. My contract reads and I sign that I will not sexually tolerate any form of, I will not tolerate any form of sexual harassment. Then when we are working with other partners, we tell them we will only work with you if you are zero tolerant to sexual harassment. So you must be able to set your standards about who you are and what you are, and that organization must tell people, anybody who is coming on board, all clients who are coming on board, they must be told that this organization, if it is ARIJ will say, we are zero tolerant to sexual harassment. Whether you are an employee, whether you are a visitor, you are not going to sexually harass anybody. In Africa, we have seen where visitors to the TV station or radio station are sexually harassing journalists, reporters or producers or presenters. So how can we stop that? We must ensure that that works. The fear of losing employment remains the biggest challenge because people wonder, if I lose this job, where will I go? And in some cases, the person who is sexually harassing you tells you, where are you going to report? If you report me, you will never be employed anywhere in this town or in this country because they think they are powerful. But you can bring them down and you can report them and you will still get another job because you are able to speak up for yourself. Ruba?
سأشارك تعليق وأعطي المجال.
I will also share with you a comment, and there's a comment from Libya, and he says, accusing women in their honor is as a weapon that's used against them for them not to have a political participation, for instance. And Khadija says, yes, we should break the silence, and even if this was to cause any social challenges, but it will stop the perpetrator. And he reiterate that it's very important to expose this in social media and so on. Amani would like to ask the last question, if you can still, Amani.
Yeah.
Amani is asking. Amani would like to say that she's from Libya. And I would like to second that my colleague from Libya who said that I'm from Libya, but I was born in Burundi. So my question is, what if a woman in the street was subject to sexual harassment? How can she handle the situation without causing chaos? Because although women would feel oppressed, still the society would look to her as she's the responsible for this deed. And that's it.
I think we can educate our society. As media, we have a responsibility. We entertain, we inform, we educate. As media, we can carry out a media advocacy on sexual harassment and decide that we will talk about it in our radio stations, in our newspapers, in our TV stations, and we make people know that sexual harassment is wrong. You know, we can't pretend as media that things will just happen. We have to take responsibility. We have to talk about it. Let it be a campaign. Let it be a media advocacy on sexual harassment where we use all platforms. We bring in experts to our studios to talk to our people so that then people understand that the issue we are talking about is a problem and it is not the woman to blame. It is a societal issue and it comes because of unequal power relations, and this is something that has to be dealt with, and we cannot go blaming women while the woman did nothing and the man touched her. It happens to all of us. I've walked in the streets, you're meeting a man and he's on your breast. You're wondering, what is this one doing to me? So you must really create awareness. We must tell our parents, our sisters, our citizens, our mothers, talk to your daughters, not to allow somebody to touch them. You know, the way we culturally bring them up, let those be conversations that start at the family table, and from there they go to our schools, and from there they go to our colleges, and we keep on talking about them without getting tired, and something will happen, because we are going to raise the level of consciousness among our people, and they will know that sexual harassment is wrong and that it should not happen. Rumba?
شكرا جين. إن كان هنالك
Thank you very much, Jane. What we've learned today is that we all are in the same boat regarding misconceptions towards against women, and what you're doing now is something very, very important, and it's like a revolutionary about keeping these workplaces free of harassment, and want to also to reiterate this concept that women should not feel that they're alone, and that we're here to support. Last comment from Rami, and I hope it's quick because we're out of time.
تفضل.
أنا هتكلم من زاوية اجتماعية كمختص اجتماعي.
He's a social worker. And regarding sexual harassment in public places, where the government usually neglects this issue, and we notice that it's prevailing this attitude that there is harassment in public places, and when they complain, they're not regarded as or taken seriously. So why don't human rights and other organizations maybe take or have a representative that could defend these cases that might complain to the police, but they are not taken seriously? So and that's why they feel isolated. Who will defend these cases? A woman might not have or afford to bring in a lawyer. So this is it. Thank you. Okay, Jane, would you like to reply?
Yeah, I just want to say that as a society, we have responsibility, and we can come together. When you come together as social workers, human rights organizations, and you talk to the people in the transport sector, and you tell them that there's a lot of sexual harassment taking place and we would like it to stop because our women are being violated, then those people in the transport sector must talk to their employees, and they must also let their clients know that the buses and the means of transport are not going to tolerate any form of sexual harassment. And that is why I said it's important for us to have a campaign, but it's also important for us to find places like radio, like TV, like newspapers, where we can start having conversations on sexual harassment to make people know that it is wrong. And we go to social media because we know that there are many young people on social media like Facebook, like Twitter, and we start having these conversations and telling people that it is wrong. And we also talk, when we take the campaigns to TV and radio, we tell mothers and fathers that as your sons are growing up, please let your sons know that it is wrong to touch a woman without her permission. It is all about socialization. Rami, who is a social worker, should know. It's all about socialization, but we need to come together as organizations, human rights organizations, government, public places, public entities, and decide that sexual harassment is wrong. It is a crime. If in your country there is a law, in my country there is a law. I'm not sure about your countries. I know Lebanon was trying to have a law on sexual harassment. I don't know whether it worked. Egypt as well. So can we then let people know about these laws, that if you are sexually harassed, you, like I said, not everybody can afford a lawyer. Even me, I can't afford a lawyer. But there are organizations that work and can get for you a lawyer pro bono where you don't have to pay. And then you will be able to be helped. That's all I can say, Ruba, and I want to say thank you so much.
شكرا جزيلا جين.
Thank you very much, Jane. We have come to the end of this session. It was a very interesting session. I would like to thank all participants, and we thank Arij, investigative, and all our partners. And of course, we like to, and Irex and Win. And as we previously mentioned, has come a very big project, and in such a short time. So you can follow up with this session. There's the link in the chat. You can follow our researches, guidelines, awareness videos, and check all the videos that were recorded in these sessions. And you can also join the Together Against Awareness. This is the first diploma that of a kind that will take place over the coming 3 months. It will start 1st of June until 15th of September. This is so next week we will not have sessions, and then we will go back to 5 p.m. Amman time to have sessions about privacy, defamation, sexual defamation, and we will have with us Fathiya Nakhafeh. Until then, we say happy Easter to all, and we meet with you again on May 17th. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.